Hello everyone! I played in the European Continentals Championship arranged by Silph Arena and I finished with 5 wins and 2 losses, which put me on the 20th place out of 104. And the format is that you have a team of 6 and you play 3 games against opponents that have the same amount of wins as yourself, and after 7 rounds, top 8 advance to playoffs. So sadly for me, I did not prevail. In this video, I will showcase the most interesting battle from every opponent that I faced, both wins and losses, and I will talk about my thought process and mistakes and such. In round number 1 I went up against Genevieves, and here you can see the teams on screen, and there's not really any huge weakness that any one of us can exploit. So I'm gonna bring my Shiftry for his Azumarill, and then I will bring 2 checks and counters to his best Shiftry counters. So I have my Noctowl against his Scrafty and Blastoise against his Ninetales if he decides to bring them, and he swaps his Scrafty into Noctowl. So this is a fairly neutral matchup, but I will for sure be able to take some shields. And the Scrafty is most likely to bait on the first one because they want the boost as early as possible. And here I expected to reach my second Sky attack, but I actually go down before. So that was a really bad play by me, huge misplay, and now suddenly my best counter to Quilladin is also gone. So at this point I'm going to go straight for the 2 shielded Shiftry and hope that my opponent has either Marshtomp or Azumarill in the back. So I did not shield my Blastoise, and then here I'm going to bait the Ice Beam, which is likely to take a shield, and then I'm going for a double shielded Shiftry sweep. My opponent is charging up a lot of energy, but the Quilladin does not have any nuke move. They have some grass move and then also body slam, so I'm not gonna shield the first one. And then my opponent makes a beautiful catch onto his Azumarill, but these bubbles are not going to be able to take me down, and I still have 2 shields. So I'm going to charge up a ton of energy and go for 2 Leaf Blades, and when I exit this matchup I will have so much energy that I have a charge move ready for Quilladin. So even though I made a huge misplay, I still was able to sweep with a double shielded Shiftry. And then after this I proceeded to lose the 2 other games, so I lost to Genevieves and started the tournament with 0-1. In round number 2 I go up against Aurum, and here my team is very favorable against his, because my Bronzong defeats 4 of his Pokemon and is only really defeated by the Swampert. So I will for sure bring Bronzong, and then I will bring Shiftry as a Swampert counter, and then I thought why not just go double dark. So I went with Scrafty also in all 3 games with Bronzong as a lead. And my opponent leads with Swampert here, so let's see how he tackles this team. I of course safe swap into Scrafty to lure out the counter to Shiftry, and then also try to take switch advantage. And since my opponent did not shield the power up punch, I'm going to be able to take switch advantage here just by shielding twice if needed. Since we both take 5 counters to our charge moves and I have an energy advantage. So here I have switch advantage, and I can also deal a huge amount of damage to this Crustle. So I should be in a winning position, right? I have Bronzong against Crustle and then Shiftry against the Swampert. But nope, that's not the case. I actually should have switched immediately there, expecting the switch, because now I let my opponent Swampert get too much energy. So here it's basically a 50-50. Is this the Sludge Bomb or the Hydro Cannon? He's going to reach one of each, and then it's a Hydro Cannon. And he's just able to reach the Sludge Bomb actually. So I end up losing this game because of my I was way too slow on the switch. But in the other 2 games I played much better than I did here, and I won comfortably. So I still won the full match. Moving on to round number 3 against Violins, and here the big difference team-wise is that Noctowl either wins or checks my opponent's entire team. So team-wise I had the edge for sure, and here in the lead we are kinda equal. Both fast moves are resisted and both charge moves are neutral, but then we simultaneously swap. I swap into my Noctowl and he into his Hitmontop, and here I'm suddenly in an incredibly bad position, because my opponent will outpace me to double close combat, and I need to shield both of them to maintain switch advantage, and I really want switch because my Scrafty cannot go up against his Gallade, because at this point I already know that Gallade has Charm. So I had to double shield to maintain it, but then all of this energy on Noctowl is wasted, so that was very poorly executed by me. I should have just played in any other way, but now I straight up gave away this game to my opponent. So I go in with Dragalge and try to farm down to have some energy for this Gallade, but a shielded Gallade can farm down either of my Pokemon and then defeat the other one with a charge move. So at this point I had already lost the game. So poorly played by me. Even though I had the better team, my opponent outplayed me completely here. But luckily I had already won the 2 other games, so I still won the match. So now at this point I'm 2-1 in the tournament. Next up I faced Iandro in round number 4, and here I am in a very bad spot already, because my team has a very hard time against Steelix, Pelipper and Escavalier in any order. So and that's what Iandro also ended up playing. So here I was hard counter in the lead, and then I safe swap into Blastoise, because that's my most neutral Pokemon against those 3 that I just mentioned, and my opponent counter switches into Pelipper. So well, this is kind of okay, I guess. I will try to get switch advantage, and my opponent fell for the first bait when I baited the Ice Beam, but went for the Hydro Cannon. And then my second Hydro Cannon connects, and my opponent went straight for the Hurricane. And this might be another Hurricane, so I'm gonna shield this one as well, because now I will be able to take switch advantage. This is just a Weather Ball, and my opponent is not gonna reach any more charge moves. So I managed to get switch advantage, and then my opponent comes back in with the Steelix. So at this point I'm suddenly in a winning position, and I should definitely have won this game. But I completely messed up, because I expected the Escavalier in the back, but then I went for foul play here. Why do I go for foul play? No one knows, because that's super stupid. I should just have went straight into the Noctowl and preserved as much health as possible on my Scrafty, so that I could have beaten the Steelix. But now I have no energy on my Scrafty, and the Steelix is still way too healthy, so I'm not going to be able to take down the Steelix with my Noctowl in any way. And then my opponent will come out with so much energy that they can reach an Earthquake and take out my Scrafty. So that was extremely bad play by me, and Iandro here ended up going 19-2 in this tournament. So it's not a shame in any way to lose to Iandro, but well, of course I should have won that game if I didn't mess up completely. Moving on to round 5 against Nexus Ilya. Here I would say that I have the favorable team, since my Scrafty and Dragalge both have a ton of play against many of my opponent's Pokemon. But it's not over by any means, and this lead is fairly neutral. So here I'm going to catch the Weather Ball on 7, because I'm confident that he's going to try to hit the CMP, and most Scrafties go for the first charge move on 7 after 7 counters. So then my opponent switches into Obstagoon to get some value from it, because he doesn't want the Obstagoon to go up against the Scrafty, I guess. And I'm not able to reach the Gunk Shot. I would for sure have gone for the Gunk Shot if I had the energy, but I actually get the shield anyways. He was expecting an Outrage. And then I can connect with the second Aqua Tail instead. So here I go straight for the Power Up Punch, because I don't want to get hit by any cross shops here. And then my opponent comes back in with the Politoed. I'm not going to shield the first one, but I will shield in case my opponent gets to another one. I really hope that they shield this or go down, but they survive with just a sliver of health, and I'm forced to shield this in case my opponent has some Shifter counter in the back. And they do. So here I go straight for the next Power Up Punch, and I'm happy that my opponent lost count on the counters, because of course they wouldn't shield that if they knew it was a Power Up Punch. So now my Shiftry can come in and deal a whole bunch of damage, and it's still a very bad position. I don't expect to win this game, but then I'm exactly able to take down the Ninetales, and then here we lag, and he goes down, but we agreed to a tie there, so we had a rematch instead. But it was a very interesting and intense game. Moving on to round 6, and here I am at the point 3-2, and my opponent is Rasbanaria, and there's nothing to note about the teams, so let's jump straight into it. I have a very positive lead, and my opponent safe swapped into Shadow Fortress, so this is still a good matchup, so I'm going to stay in for a while, but I need to preserve my Noctowl, since that's my only counter to Chestnut in this line. So I am planning to switch out at some point. So after this second Sky attack, I'm going to go into Blastoise and hopefully farm down my opponent's fortress before his switch timer is up. But that's not really going to go as planned. I switch, and then just before my opponent is KO'd, he's able to switch again. And he also banked a mirror shot, so I have to remember that. And my opponent goes into a charge move after 5 Vine Whips, so I knew it was just a superpower, which I could survive without any problems. And then my opponent did not respect the Ice Beam and saved his shield for later. So here my opponent has plenty of energy, but I'm confident that the double debuffed, double super effective wing attack spam can farm down. And here I'm not going to shield the mirror shot because I can survive it, and then I went into Scrafty just to get some extra energy. And my opponent's last Pokemon is the Escavalier, and this should be a bad matchup. If you just look at the typing, he deals super effective damage, I deal neutral damage, but Scrafty is such a tanky fighter, and my opponent's Escavalier does not have stab, so this is actually favorable. But then my opponent had the Acid Spray, so suddenly it's not favorable anymore. But I'm able to almost farm down, and my opponent is still 1 away from his charge move, so it was a very close game. Moving on to round 7, and I face off against Savage Boy, who is a Norwegian acquaintance, and if he gets a 3-0 here, he would have gone to the playoffs, but I was already out because I won too few of the partial games. And looking at the teams, he has a Shadow Zapdos that is really scary for my team, because it basically one-shots 4 of my Pokemon, and I have not really got any clean answer to it, so I expect it. And at this point we have 1 win each, and the last game he basically swept me with the Septus, so here I will try to just connect with any charge move on Septus so that I can farm it down with Dragalge later. So I go for the Leaf Blade bait, but even if it's a bait, a Leaf Blade will still deal basically half of the health of Shadow Zapdos because it's so incredibly glassy. And thanks to the fact that Shiftry outpaces the Zapdos, I will be able to connect with at least 1 Leaf Blade. Or so I thought, but my opponent switched into Scrafty to catch this, and here I had basically two plays that I could have done. I could have done 3 more Snarls and banked a Leaf Blade for the Zapdos later in the game, or as I did now, I want to have some health on Shiftry instead. So I went straight into Noctowl, and I will take down this Scrafty, and then I'm definitely out of farm down range for the Zapdos, which is going to come back in, so my opponent is forced to throw some energy on it. And now all of the shields are down, and my opponent is in farm down range with Dragalge. So I'm coming in here, still a neutral Drill Peck deals a ton of damage, but I'm able to almost take down the Zapdos, and then my opponent has a Whiscash in the back. So sadly for Savage Boy, the dream of going to playoffs in European Championship ended there, but it was still a great game. So that's it. I got 5 wins and 2 losses and ended on 20th place out of 104 competitors, and thanks for watching.